Hi, friends. Welcome to my Fall into Rhythm workshop. Happy autumn equinox. We're going to talk tonight about how to really deal with some of the pent-up heat that we've been living under with these past heat waves here in Southern California and lots of the West and really all around the world, frankly. We'll talk about some of that heat, how that translates into inflammation and what the symptoms and chronic impact of inflammation are. And then look at this season where we're moving into, we're in this bridge between summer and winter, which we call fall. And we'll see what we can do to get into rhythm and back to balance to help to conquer some of the issues we've been dealing with. It's important to understand that chronic inflammation is now thought to be this cause of 50% of the deaths globally. We already know it's the underlying cause of most disease, and that 80% of most disease is triggered by chronic stress. And the two go hand in hand. There's a really beautiful book out there called Inflamed that really talks about the intersection of the challenges that the earth is under, environmental justice, and so both that and social justice issues, but also too what we as humans are under as a relate of all of that, of the stress of chronic heat and these extended heat waves, issues of climate change, and then also too the stresses of some of the structures in which we're living. So I wanted to give some props to Dr. Rupa Maria for that stat there in that wonderful book. So are you overheated? Now, I'm coming to you on, Thursday, September, what is it, the 21st, the 22nd. But just days before this, we had 10 to 14 days of pretty crazy, humid, hot weather. And when we talk about heat, sometimes we don't realize how powerful heat can be. So what are some words for heat? Impassioned, hot, burning up, hot under the collar, hot and bothered, right? We often hear that related to somebody who is cranky or frustrated, feverish, inflamed, agitated. So I thought those were important words to bring to the context of this session, but also from an Ayurvedic perspective. Now, a lot of you know me as a yoga teacher, and you may already be familiar with yoga's sister science, we call it Ayurveda. Thousands-year-old practice of how to optimize your health and well-being. And one of the predominant Western teachers of Ayurveda is John Douillard, who wrote the 3-Season Diet many, many years ago. And he was my first Ayurveda teacher back in 2007. And at that time, I would say that I was chronically overheated and going, and full of these terms he talks about. Well, I was a little bit hot-headed and fired up. I was in the middle of shifting from my corporate life and into becoming a full-time yoga teacher. Well, I was at the time. I was teaching 10 heated classes a week, but I also began my journey to becoming a holistic health coach. And so I was traveling to New York City once a month for 10 months. And, flying out Friday night, being in school all weekend, coming back Monday morning and going straight to work to teach yoga right after that. And so my whole life was just on fire. It was great. It was a lot of passion moving into this new space, but I was working hard. I was playing hard. I was in the heat like 27 hours a week. And come fall, I ended up getting all kinds of colds and flus. Like, anybody sneezed within a week of me or 3 feet of me, I got sick, and I thought that was so odd. But then I went and saw John Douillard speak at my school, and he talked about Ayurveda and the intrinsic imbalances that happen in our bodies if we're not aligned with nature. And I realized that I was just adding fuel to the fire, and I was so fired up, and eating spicy foods, which add more fire, and drinking big, bold wines, which I like, that add more fire, and drinking too much coffee, which adds more fire. And so all of those things are creating inflammation and pent-up heat, which ends up compromising your immune system. And so if you have signs of this, what we call pitta imbalance, It can show up as just emotionally as feeling cranky or a little bit angry, irritated. It can show up on your skin like a rash or flushing, and it can show up in your digestive system, anything between like cold sores, canker sores, all the way down to, let's say, fiery stools. I'll try to keep the I'll try to keep the conversation up leveled, but digestion and elimination are really important foundations of Ayurveda. So learning this really changed my whole perspective of how to feed myself and nurture myself. And that's what really put me on the path to, now leading these seasonal cleanses that I've been doing for over a decade. It was a really big part. Ayurveda, seasonal eating, and seasonal living was a huge part of my own healing journey. So if we leave this excess pitta energy, this excess heat unchecked, it can end up leading to inflammation. So what can we do to address it? We're going to talk a little bit about what the symptoms and issues of inflammation are. But I wanted to give you just a little bit of sense of, what can you start doing in case you can't sit through this whole thing. I'm going to try to do this in 30 minutes, by the way. So what's so wise about Ayurveda is it teaches us that what is growing in the season is naturally helps to combat the typical excesses of the season. So in the summer season, we get all these beautiful sweet fruits, and squashes and cucumbers that are hydrating and cooling. So these natural sweet foods can help cool us, but also bitter foods like all the dark leafy greens, parsley and basil and cilantro and kale and salad greens. All of those things help to support our liver function and which our liver tends to get overheated when we're overstressed. So those bitter foods can help kind of calm us down from the inside out and support liver function and help and enable it to better help us detox. So, and when we are in the summer season, we're actually harvesting the foods that take us into the winter season. I'll talk a little bit about where does fall fall? So we'll get a sense of where we're at and we really consider like the bridge, the months of the end of September, moving through October, and sometimes even into November here in Southern California. We have what's called Indian summer. So ways to balance your excess pitta are to change what you're eating, to add in bitter foods, cooling foods, sweet foods, but also changing your attitude a little bit, giving yourself a little more time to be, just to be present, just to find a little stillness, to connect to nature, go down and put your feet in the pool or in the ocean, put your toes in the grass. Those are very nurturing and cooling behaviors that can help calm sort of the mental aspects of pitta. Also to be aware, and I mentioned this, I know my personal journey, but that alcohol and coffee exacerbate that heat, right? They increase pitta. So if you're already feeling a little bit overheated and cranky, it's probably time to take those down a notch. And interesting, red meat also tends to increase that heat. So just be aware of how the foods you're choosing can be impacting you. Spicy foods too can also add that heat, right? Like on a hot day, does it sound good to eat a hot spicy curry or to have, a hot spicy stir fry or the hottest salsa out there? Like, in one sense, it feels good because it might make you sweat, right? But if there's too much spice, that can create a little more of this internal heat and exacerbate this heat, which can lead to more inflammation. So those are some quick things, and we'll get into a little more details. So what is inflammation? Living in stress, which most of us, we have been doing, it's very much part of our American culture, but especially since the last couple of years of the shifts we've made with the pandemic and the quarantines and a lot of pressures of trying to figure out boundaries between work and life, or having to reposition work like I had to do because our jobs were eliminated or fully changed or put on hiatus for so long. Also too, there's been a huge increase in processed foods because people turn to food to cope when they're stressed, right? Flaming hot Cheetos can taste really good when you're stressed out, something to crunch on, get out a little bit of that tension and that anger, right? But these processed foods are heavy in salt and sugar, and those can have their own impact in terms of taxing the body, increasing toxicity, and increasing inflammation. Also, too, a lot of us developed poor habits because we didn't have to wake up early to commute or go to work. And so we started staying up later and then sleeping less or sleeping less, having less quality sleep. And also with all of this, right, with changing our lifestyle, living under this stress and eating these processed foods can lead to poor gut health. And our gut health is a huge foundation of our immune system, as I mentioned earlier. And if there's too much stress and too much inflammation and too much heat, then there's too much fire in the liver and fire in the gut, too much bile, too much digestive fire, and that can dampen your immune response. So we need that gut health to help us optimize our digestion, and quell inflammation and optimize immune function. And I love this quote from John Juilliard. I like to read more of it, but I'm for you. I want to give you more context. But for the sake of time, I'm going to keep this really short. He says, when nature is on our side and life is flowing in sync with its cycles, rather than working against them, stress does not have the same impact. So what is so important is for us to reclaim our connection to nature, to start to be more aware of how the days are shifting, how the weather is changing, how the plants around us are changing, how what foods are available are changing. And so as we align with nature and shift our diets and shift our rhythms, then we can alleviate those physiological stress responses, calm the inflammation, have better digestion, have better immune function, have clear skin that glows, a sense of radiance when we actually feel aligned and in sync. So what are the impacts of inflammation? So some symptoms I mentioned can be, right, in the short term, if you notice you're kind of cranky or short-tempered, that you're easily frustrated or irritable, a sense of depression, exhaustion, burnout is very much related to inflammation, and having a lack of motivation. You know, at the tail end of this heat wave we had and a few days after that, I was just like exasperated. It's like, please let me just watch Virgin River on Netflix with the fan blowing on me and a very cold beverage. I just got like so overheated, overwhelmed, overwrought. So notice when you're starting to feel that, and maybe give yourself some time to do a little less, to chill out. To get outside is better than watching Netflix, but you know, sometimes we choose, I'm human. I don't always make the best choices for coping. And at least Virgin River is full of rivers and forest scenery, and it just looks cool and refreshing. So it was good to put my mind there. It's corny, like a kind of soap opera thing on Netflix. But anyway, so over time, with too much inflammation chronic inflammation can lead to chronic illness, cancer, for sure, diabetes. I'll show you a study in a moment. It talks about the connection between inflammation and increased weight size, so overweight and obesity. So if you've been struggling with belly fat or trying to lose weight and it's not happening, you know, you want to check what's happening with your stress and inflammatory response, because all of that has a hormonal implication, and then that makes losing weight even harder. Arthritis, if you're waking up with joint pain, right, or starting to feel back pain, arthritis, hand pain, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's disease. In the newest research on Alzheimer's disease, it's like diabetes in the brain. So if you have been eating a lot of sugar, you want to be really, really careful, because not only does that impact your body's ability to process sugar, but it impacts your brain ability to convert the energy it needs for information, and that impacts then cognition and can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. Pretty scary stuff. And heart disease, right? So long-term inflammation is really a huge problem. So I mentioned it's underlying cause of most diseases, and part of it is that so many of us, especially in these last couple of years, wake up stressed. We're like, oh God, I got to go to work, or we just start working. Maybe we don't even have that sense of dread, but we just immediately start checking our emails and we start working. I remember I used to do this back in the day in corporate when I worked, when I had to work, got to work from home when I wasn't traveling. I would just get up, check my email, and like hours later, I hadn't even brushed my teeth. I was just, I was still in my pajamas. It was crazy. So, but when we do that, we wake up in a sense, start our day in a stage of stress, which includes increased cortisol levels. And that increased cortisol is tied to increased inflammation and the hypertension and the belly fat and the other things I was mentioning. That puts us in a state of fight or flight where it's helpful if we need to run from a bear, but if we are sitting all day long in that state of stress, we're not allowing our body to dissipate any of that. So what we want to do instead is, especially if possible, before you start your workday, is to wake up and take a little time to put your body in the state of rest and digest. And so that means taking a little more time to wake up, being thoughtful about your beverages, maybe having some lemon water like we do in my detox programs, taking some time to do some movement, to go for a walk, have a few breaths, even if it's 1 minute or 3 minutes, or find that little bit of time to check in with yourself and take a few breaths and see if you can create a greater sense of calm before you start your workday, and especially before you take your first meal. Because our body is really not quite ready for food within the first hour or more of waking. We're not really ready to take in, our insulin's not really ready to respond to glucose. So that's something we'll talk about in a second with rhythmic eating. But so whatever you can do, these small things, whether it's taking deep breaths, taking a little walk outside, giving yourself a little time for yourself before you start your workday, can switch that chronic stress response and help put you in a state where hopefully you can start to decrease some of that inflammation and take back a little time. So what is the latest science showing us? Meditation is actually a really powerful tool to help combat inflammation. This is a study done by Leonard Calabrese, and talking about how they proved that mindfulness and meditation can actually impact the inflammatory pathways. And by the way, inflammation is helpful. It's part of our immune function. It's part of the healing process. But the problem is when it's chronic. And so our body is constantly trying to fight, that's when it becomes a problem. So we want to break down that chronic stress response. And so meditation helps to down-regulate those pathways. So also too, we see correlation between C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation, fibronectin, and adiponectin. These are biomarkers of inflammation. And these we see correlate with increased waist circumference. So that belly fat has a biological impact on what's happening at a cellular level. So carrying weight in your hips has much less impact, say, than the weight we carry around our waist. And so they were finding that there is definitely a correlation between inflammation and waist size. And then waist size in turn is correlated with metabolic syndrome, which is a precursor for type 2 diabetes and or cardiovascular disease. So it's something we really want to conquer. So conquering that inflammation is key. And one of the ways you can do it, something so simple, and I do this in every fall cleanse, is eat an apple a day. Well, in this study, they actually tested 3 apples a day. And hey, that would work, right? If eating 3 apples a day means you're eating less Cheetos or donuts or Oreos or, name whatever processed food, it's going to give you great fiber, which I'll tell you in a second why that's so powerful. But eating apples daily over a 6-week period help to combat inflammation, especially the markers of obesity and cardiovascular disease risk. So I would caveat here that I would prefer if you eat an organic apple a day, because most years the apple shows up on the very top of the Dirty Dozen list, which the Environmental Working Group rates to find to give us a sense of what the highest toxic levels are in produce. And so apples are usually at the top. So an apple a day, maybe 3, would help you crowd out some junk food, but also help to start calm inflammation. And a great thing that comes with apples is fiber. And other studies are showing that increasing fiber helps to increase the biodiversity in your gut. And having a healthy gut microbiome helps to counter inflammation, generally speaking. And even the latest research, this is a different study from this, is a talk I was just on Monday, was talking about how this particular fiber, inulin, can help with, it looks like it can help, well, so far in mice models, it's showing prevention for Alzheimer's disease. So, and we find this fiber in foods like asparagus, bananas, burdock, chicory, radicchio, and endive, by the way, those are all bitter foods, bitter tastes that we want to help support liver function anyway. So is dandelion root and artichokes. So this is a really specific fiber that they tested, but fiber in general is great for your gut health, helps to manage your blood sugar levels, and turns out can help combat inflammation. So speaking of that diversity, the increase of packaged foods and takeout foods that a lot of us took on during the quarantines, and there's data out there to show like how high, how significant the increases were in from companies like Pepsi, Frito-Lay, in their packaged foods. And the thing is, those foods, right, are pretty devoid of the microbe. They've been so highly processed, they lack the fiber we need to support the good bugs in our microbiome. And they also lack any sort of probiotics themselves, right? So eating those foods, which maybe some of you are still stuck in that rut. I mean, it's amazing the habits we created over the last couple of years and how they've been entrenched. So just notice that, how you're eating and starting to shift from the packaged processed foods to more local, seasonal, whole foods can help support your gut diversity and calm that inflammation. Also, too, the impact on the earth, as I was mentioning from this book, Inflamed, right? That is really impacting the quality of soil. So there's a whole movement to regenerate soil. And that's the next movement beyond organic is regenerative organic or certified, ROC? Regenerative organic certified is one of the new labels out there. And so there are farmers out there who are working to rebuild soil. So we have better soil diversity because when we feed the soil, it better feeds the plants and then it better feeds us. So we have to be a little more conscious as we're trying to heal ourselves. And in the process, it helps to heal the planet. So taming inflammation overall does take some awareness, right? A little bit of self-care, clean eating, and lifestyle changes that may include, a little bit of time for slowing down and for being more mindful and for meditating. So getting to fall specifically, like a lot of what I was talking about is the heat of pitta, which we think of as the summer season or dosha, if you've heard these words from Ayurveda. And when we get into fall, it really depends on where you live. Seasonality is all about locality. And so here in Southern California, we tend to have Indian summers where we still have heat through October and even in November, as I mentioned. And Ayurveda really looks at 3 growing seasons. So Pitta usually extends to the end of harvest season. And then Vata or winter season begins, right? When we're eating more of those stored foods. So depending where you live, fall is like a bridge between those seasons, and it may be short or it may be long. But it's where we're reaping the benefits of the summer sun in terms of the harvest, but it's a time for us to be sure to cool that pent-up heat from that summer, that fiery energy, so that we can optimize our digestion and immune function to get us ready for the risk of winter, right? When it's cold and dry and there's more colds and flus and illnesses and who knows, another variety of COVID coming, hopefully not. But so we want to prime our systems now in this transition to be ready for winter, to address the accumulation of summer and prepare for winter. So when we talk about seasonal eating, it's really what I talk about in my greater program is rhythmic eating. And when we find rhythm in our eating, that puts us in that alignment with nature that John Juilliard was talking about. So eating local foods in season means you're getting fruits and vegetables that are harvested at their peak, so they taste better. And you don't have to do that much work to make them taste good. Also, too, eating locally helps us align with our outer ecosystem. You get more in tune with the foods around you, and the diversity that you're experiencing, that they're experiencing, right, helps you increase the diversity of your own microbiome so that your ecosystem internally aligns with the external ecosystem. And if you remember, not too long ago, we were still cave people, and all we did was eat what was local. And we haven't quite evolved to the food system that we're living in now. And by the way, that's why I'm in grad school. I'm like trying to help address the food system, which is really failing us in terms of health. So one of the best things you can do is try to find what are local sources for food around you, whether it's a farm stand or a farmer's market. And what is local, right? Depending on where you live, it could be within 50 miles, could be 100, could be 500. How about within the US, right? How about within your state, if you can? But finding that locality is going to help you better align with the energy of the seasons. So how do we eat for the fall seasons? If you're new to me, may not be familiar with the 3 Ps, but this is my baseline for how I create meal plans and recipes, is to think about first produce. Produce really should be half our plate should be produce. Even the USDA agrees, although that's what they recommend. And that's what we know is best for ideal health outcomes. But we really want you to get a rainbow of fruits and vegetables and include them from local seasonal sources if available. So what you're looking for now in this bridge season of fall are bitter foods like kale, cilantro, parsley, chard, leafy greens, any kind of leafy greens, and then even leafy purples, red cabbage and radicchio are great ones to add in or endive. Those really help to detoxify your liver. Artichokes, celery, and green beans help to alkalize your body. So if you're in a state of inflammation, it tend to be a little bit acidic. So these help to create a little more, to balance that acidity and create more alkalinity. You want naturally sweet foods. We want to avoid refined and added sugar because that tends to increase inflammation. So our naturally sweet foods are highly colored, rich in antioxidants. They tend to be high in fiber. So your apples, beets, berries, dates, melons, pears, all the peas are here. It's a season of peas. Pineapple, persimmons, papaya, peppers, pomegranates, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, all kinds of peas are coming in season. And they're really, really naturally sweet and grounding and wonderful in this period of transition. Of course, you want proteins. Nuts, seeds, and legumes are great. If you eat animal products, go for grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised as often as you can. And then a great way to increase the diversity of your gut and help calm that inflammation is to add in what I call pizzazz. So fermented foods are going to add those are probiotics those are actual, little bacteria guys that are going to help support your digestive system. The fibers, the prebiotics, but also adding in different spices, different teas, especially turmeric, cumin, and coriander. I have here a ginger turmeric tea, naturally cooling from the inside. Turmeric is a really powerful herb, especially if you are dealing with inflammation. And that's your foundation. And then if you need more energy, you add your pasta, your rice, your whole grain bread, whatever. So when we're talking about rhythmic eating, we're talking about what we're eating, local and seasonal, ideally clean, which, means minding the dirty dozen, organic. But we're also talking about how and when. The timing of what you eat is super important. And I'll get into this more in the October detox, but taking the time to pause and breathe before you eat to assess if you're really hungry, giving yourself time to feast, right, to eat, but also to rest and digest. To help optimize your digestion, you want to have regular eating times, eating, lunch and dinner at the same-ish time most days, but giving yourself a window, 12 hours or even more, to rest your digestive system so that your liver can do its other job of detoxification. Adding some chlorophyll to your day, also very helpful because chlorophyll helps support natural detox processes, and it's part of the bitter taste that helps calm inflammation. So that rhythmic eating is really key. So I just wanted to give a little insight into what the Fall Detox is. And this is a 21-day program with a little bit of a pre-start if you want to do a little Kickstarter with us, a little warm-up. And in the detox, we conquer sugar addiction. Well, we try, right? We put sugar on hiatus for 3 weeks or more. We flush out toxins by crowding them out with real seasonal food. So it's a natural detox. We fall into rhythm with intermittent fasting, some mindfulness practices, some morning routines to help set you on a daily routine that helps tame inflammation. And in the process, you optimize your digestion and help minimize gas and bloating, brain fog, a lot of the symptoms that we see as an accumulation of inflammation. So I just want to give you some dates so you can think about this. It actually starts on Monday, October 10th, and it runs through the 30th, so you're done in time for Halloween. We have an optional, for those of you who are local, there'll be an optional little pumpkin pie smoothie potluck. And then also optional is a Kickstart before. So I think it's going to be 2 weeks from tonight already? Yeah, Thursday, October 6th. We'll do a little Kickstart. So we'll lay out the foundation of the program and help prepare you with shopping lists, help you, have the weekend to set yourself up for success. So you start on Monday and you'll be ready to go to jumpstart your detox. So it is a virtual community. We'll, like I've said, have opportunities to meet in person, and we can meet through Zoom. But a lot of the content is delivered through this app, which is rooted in the teachings of positive psychology. And it's an opportunity for us to cheer ourselves on and support each other through the detox program. So I also too offer you a one-on-one session with me at the beginning so I can help you clarify your goals for where you want to go so that you can align the choices you make daily with what your greater goal is, right? To improve your sleep, to drop some weight, to improve your mood, to get less cranky, to tame inflammation, to conquer some, start to conquer some chronic symptoms that you're having. So I also too, with all of the inflammation going around, and the inflation going around, I made the conscious choice to hold my prices steady so that it's not an extra burden for you. So same price as we did last season, $250 gets you the whole program. And for the first 10 people to register, you get to bring a friend for free. So email me, let me know the name of your friend. Or if you're ready to go solo, let me know. You can click the link below and go ahead and register, or also give you the information to go see a little bit more how it works on my website. I'm really grateful that you take the time to watch this. I hope you got some tips that you can put into practice now. And I do hope you'll think about joining us for our fall detox. So I really look forward to seeing you soon. And let me figure out how to stop my recording for some Q&A. All right. Cheers and happy fall, y'all.